Federal safety standards define a zone on your windshield, roughly a 2-foot band centered directly on your steering wheel, where a crack can be disqualified from repair entirely, regardless of size, regardless of which kit you buy, regardless of how good the resin is. Not because the glue won't hold, because federal regulators decided a repaired crack sitting directly in your line of sight is never allowed to carry even a small risk of distortion. Before a single brand gets mentioned in this video, you need to know that zone exists, because it makes every kit in this comparison completely irrelevant for a real percentage of the cracks people try to fix with them. The windshield isn't just there to keep the wind off your face. It provides up to 40% of your vehicle's structural integrity during a rollover, and it's part of the load path that lets your airbags deploy correctly. That's why the rules around repairing it are stricter than almost anything else on your car, and why a crack that looks perfectly repairable to you might already be disqualified before you've opened a single kit. Think about how most people actually approach this. A rock kicks up off the highway, a chip appears, and the instinct is to check the size against whatever rule you half remember, usually something about a quarter or a dollar coin. And if it looks small enough, straight to the auto parts store for whatever kit is cheapest or has the best packaging. Almost nobody checks where that chip actually sits relative to the steering wheel first. And that single missed step is the reason a meaningful number of DIY repairs get attempted on damage that was never going to be legally or safely repairable in the first place, no matter which of the 7 kits in this video got used, and no matter how carefully the instructions get followed. My name's Walt Renner. I dig into real, independent test data before I trust any product claim. The same as every video on this channel. No review units, no ads for any of these 7 brands. Everything you're about to hear traces back to either a controlled strength and hardness test or an independent repair technician's own direct grading, and I'll tell you which one every time a number comes up. Before I go any further, I want to mention something once, because it matters, and then I won't bring it up again. There's more to how I actually run these investigations than fits into any single video. The full bench test breakdown, how I source and verify every number before it goes in a script, the brands and products that get ruled out before they ever make a list. I wrote it all up on my website, links just below. I won't mention it again. If it interests you, it's there. Here's exactly what disqualifies a crack from repair, no matter what's in the box. First, the critical viewing area. Regulators define this as roughly the band swept by your windshield wipers directly in front of the driver's seat, and any crack intersecting that zone that leaves visible distortion or a secondary reflection after repair is ineligible. Full stop. Even if the crack itself is small. Second, edge damage. A crack that extends within about 1 to 2 inches of the windshield's perimeter is considered structurally disqualifying on its own, because that's exactly where the glass bonds to the vehicle's frame, and stress at that bond is highest every time the car flexes over a bump. Third, length. Most states cap repairable cracks somewhere between 6 and 11 inches, though the exact number swings by state. Texas allows 5 inches. Pennsylvania and New York allow up to 11. Fourth, and this is newer, if your vehicle has forward-facing cameras behind the glass for lane departure warning or adaptive cruise control, a crack sitting in that camera's field can disqualify the repair, even if it doesn't meaningfully block your own vision. Each of those 4 rules exists for a genuinely different reason, which is worth understanding instead of just memorizing the list. The viewing area rule is about optical clarity specifically, because even a technically strong repair can leave a faint distortion that's harmless everywhere else on the glass and dangerous directly in your sightline at night or in glare. The edge rule is purely structural, about the bond holding the entire windshield to the car's frame during a crash. The length rule is a blunt, practical proxy for how much the glass's overall integrity has already been compromised, and it varies state to state precisely because different states have made different judgment calls about where that line should sit. And the camera rule is the newest, added specifically because modern safety systems are only as reliable as the glass they're looking through. Meaning a windshield problem invisible to your own eyes can still be a real problem for the computer trying to keep your lane centered. None of the 7 kits in this comparison can do anything about any of that. No resin formula fixes a crack sitting in a federally defined no repair zone. Before you buy any kit at all, measure the damage, check where it sits relative to your steering wheel and the edge of the glass, and confirm you're even in the category these products are built to help with. If you're not, every number about to come up in this video is irrelevant to your specific crack, and you're looking at replacement, not repair, no matter how good the kit is. One more thing worth knowing before spending $1 on any of these kits. A meaningful share of comprehensive auto insurance policies cover windshield replacement, and some carry a specific zero-deductible option just for glass. Meaning a crack that's disqualified from repair might not cost you anything out of pocket to fix properly through your insurer, instead of through a $9 kit that was never going to be legally usable on that specific crack anyway. Checking your policy before checking the auto parts store shelf is a 5-minute call that could save you both the DIY attempt and the eventual replacement cost. For everything that does qualify, here's the actual comparison. 7 DIY kits and 1 professional-grade kit, tested for how much force it takes to break the repair and how easily it scratches, with a real, independent windshield repair technician grading the finished work directly on camera. 4 kits failed this comparison in ways worth knowing before you buy, and 2 came out genuinely worth your money, with 1 honest trade-off attached to each. Number 4. Antwish, $9, the cheapest kit in the entire lineup. It technically passed the strength test. The repair outlasted the surrounding glass at 18 pounds of force. That's also the weakest number of any kit that actually held. And on the hardness test, it scratched easily under the lightest test pick used, the softest result in the whole comparison. $9 gets you a repair that works, in the sense that it doesn't immediately fail, and also the least durable, least scratch-resistant result of anything that passed. There's a real difference between technically passed and worth buying, and Antwish sits squarely on the wrong side of that line. A repair that outlasts the surrounding glass in a controlled test still needs to survive years of temperature swings, wiper blades dragging across it twice a day, and road grit. And the weakest passing result in the entire field is exactly the wrong place to be starting from before any of that real-world wear begins. Number 3. Union, $15. And this is where the failures stop being about degree and start being about the product simply not doing its job. The repair broke at 8.6 pounds, less than half the strength of the working kits in this test. On the hardness test, it took heavy damage from the lightest pick used. The real problem shows up before you even get to those numbers. The pressure system in this kit doesn't actually build pressure. Instead of forcing resin into the crack the way it's designed to, the assembly acts more like a funnel, letting resin sit near the damage instead of being driven into it. That's not a formula problem. That's the physical mechanism of the kit failing to do the one job it exists to do. A resin can be perfectly good chemistry and still fail completely if the tool delivering it can't actually get it where it needs to go. That's the exact situation here. Nothing wrong with what's in the vial. Everything wrong with the plastic apparatus supposedly forcing it into the crack, which means no amount of patience or technique on the user's part fixes what's a fundamentally broken piece of hardware. Number 2. Ethlon Tools, $19, the most expensive DIY kit in the test. and the worst performer of the entire lineup, professional kit included. The repair broke at just 4.6 pounds, the weakest result of anything tested. Hardness testing showed the same heavy damage as Union. It shares the exact same mechanical flaw, acting as a funnel instead of an actual pressure injector, and it adds a second failure on top of that. The UV curing light shuts off roughly every 60 seconds, meaning a single 10-minute cure requires manually restarting the light about 10 separate times. The most expensive DIY option in this test delivered the weakest repair and the most annoying process to get there. Paying the most and getting the least is a rare enough combination that it's worth sitting with for a second. $19 is more than double what the cheapest kit in this comparison costs, and it bought a repair that failed at less than a fifth of the strength JB Weld's repair held, using a tool with the exact same fundamental design flaw as the $15 option ranked just above it, plus a curing light that can't stay powered on for a full minute at a time. Number 1, and this is the one that should genuinely bother you, because the number on paper looks great. JB Weld, $13, made in the USA, and it posted the strongest raw break strength result of any DIY kit tested, 23.6 pounds, beating every other kit in this comparison, including the professional grade option. On paper, that's the best number in the whole test. Here's what the actual independent repair technician said after grading it directly. The biggest issue with the JB Weld is that it did not stay within the repair. The resin spread beyond the damaged area during the process, a real application and containment problem that a strength number alone will never show you. A repair can be strong and still be a mess, spreading resin across clean glass around the damage instead of staying contained inside it. And that's exactly what an independent professional, not a marketing claim, caught on this one. This is the exact pattern worth carrying into every product comparison you ever watch, not just this one. A single headline number, whatever the category, tells you one thing measured one way. It doesn't tell you what a trained set of eyes notices the moment they actually look at the finished result. JB Weld's strength number would look great on a spec sheet and completely fail to warn you about the actual visible problem sitting right there on the glass, spreading past the edges of the crack it was supposed to stay inside of. Now here's what actually earned a real recommendation, tested against the same standards as everything you just heard. Permatex, $13. And this is the pick the technician's own grading and the raw numbers both point to as the strongest overall DIY kit in the comparison. The repair broke at 20.6 pounds, a strong result, and it was one of only 3 kits in the entire test, DIY or professional, that needed the heaviest available pick to cause any scratch damage at all. The adhesive pad handled cleanly during removal too, holding together better than JB Weld's pad did during that same step. A small detail that matters more than it sounds like when you're the one trying not to leave residue on clean glass. If you want the single best all-around DIY kit in this comparison, backed by both the lab numbers and an independent technician's direct grading, this is the one both point to. 2 separate measures, a controlled strength and hardness test on one side, and a trained technician's hands-on grading on the other, landing on the same product is a stronger signal than either one alone. That's the exact same pattern that separated real winners from pretenders across every category this channel has covered. When a lab number and an independent human assessment agree, that's the pick worth trusting. Rain-X, $12, and this entry comes with the most honest asterisk of the 2 winners. The resin itself performed exceptionally, tied for the hardest scratch result in the entire test alongside Permatex, and the $319 professional kit. And it broke at 21.4 pounds, comfortably ahead of most of the field. The actual injection tool is the weak point. Testing the suction and pressure directly showed the Rain-X applicator couldn't build nearly as much force as the professional-grade system, meaning the resin itself is excellent, but getting it fully into a crack's smaller legs is tougher with this specific tool than with the better-performing options. Where Rain-X pulls ahead is value. One kit contains enough resin for roughly 10 separate repairs, making the real cost per repair dramatically lower than it looks on the shelf, as long as you're patient and thorough with a tool that isn't doing you any favors. 10 repairs out of one $12 kit works out to a little over $1 in resin per repair, which is hard to beat on pure economics, even accounting for the tool's real shortcomings. The honest trade-off is patience. Expect to spend more time working the pressure cycle manually to compensate for what the applicator itself won't do on its own. And the underlying chemistry will reward that extra effort with results that tested as strong as anything else in this comparison. Worth knowing where the $319 professional kit actually landed in all of this, because the number is a genuine surprise. ClearShield earned the technician's own top grade and used a real pressure and suction system with actual O-rings, a proper drill instead of a hand-pushed pick, and a process closer to what a trained technician does at a real shop. Its brake strength result, 12.5 pounds, was still lower than several of the cheaper DIY kits, including the two winners on this list. The professional advantage here isn't raw strength, it's process, consistency, and doing the job correctly on damage that a rushed DIY attempt might botch, which is a different kind of value than the strength number alone shows. That gap is worth sitting with because it cuts against the assumption most people would make walking into this comparison. 26 times the price of the cheapest kit tested, and a lower brake strength number than the winner. What that $319 is actually buying isn't a stronger bond. It's a trained hand running a proper drill, real suction, and a repeatable process on damage most DIY attempts genuinely struggle to get right, especially anything beyond a simple, isolated chip. Here's the whole thing, fast, before you go. First, check whether your crack even qualifies for repair at all. Outside the critical viewing area, at least an inch or two from the windshield's edge, under your state's length limit, and clear of any forward-facing camera. If it doesn't qualify, no kit on this list matters. If it does, skip Antwish, Union, and Ethlon tools outright, and know that JB Weld's strong number comes with a real containment problem a technician caught firsthand. Permatex is the strongest all-around DIY pick. Rain-X has the best resin in the test wrapped around the weakest tool, with real value if you're patient with it. Run that whole checklist in order the next time a chip shows up on your own windshield. Measure it. Note exactly where it sits relative to your steering wheel and the nearest edge. Check that against your state's specific length limit, and only then start thinking about which of these two winning kits to actually buy. Skip any step in that order, and you risk spending money on a repair that was never going to be legally or structurally valid in the first place, regardless of which brand ends up in your hand. Tell me in the comments where your own crack sits relative to your steering wheel, and whether it's ever been checked against these rules before you tried to fix it yourself. I read every single one of these, and if a shop ever told you a crack you thought was repairable actually wasn't, I want to hear that story specifically. If someone in your life is about to grab whatever windshield kit is cheapest without checking where the damage actually sits first, send them this before they waste the money. And since a $13 name brand kit just failed a real technician's inspection, despite having the best lab number in the whole test. Wait until you see what happens when I run this same comparison on tire plug kits. The gap between the strength number and the real-world result might be even wider there. One last thing worth remembering past this specific video. A strength number, a cetane number, a wear scar measurement, a decibel reading, whatever the category happens to be, is only ever measuring one specific thing under one specific condition. It's real, it's useful, and it's still not the whole picture until somebody who actually knows what a finished job is supposed to look like puts their own eyes on the result. J.B. Weld's number was real. So was the technician's complaint about it. Both things were true at the same time, and only checking one of them would have gotten you half the story.